The following podcast is brought to you exclusively by the Rad Rob Radio Network.
Welcome to the Leadership Evolution Podcast, where we explore what happens after the build. I'm Luke Mickelson, founder, leader, and someone who's walked through the challenges of growing an organization, letting go, and learning how to lead in a completely new way. This podcast is for founders, executives, and leaders who are navigating growth, identity, and the tension between control and legacy. Because building something great is only the beginning. Learning how to evolve with it, that's the real work. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Leadership Evolution Podcast, our first episode where we will explore what it really means to build something that outlives you. That's what the show is going to be about. My name is Luke Mickelson. I'm the founder of Sleep in Heavenly Peace, an organization I started back in 2012 when I built a few beds for kids in my own hometown something that I wasn't prepared for, everybody. And it has now grown far beyond my role as a leader. Boy, I thought I knew what I was doing. But because the truth is, building something is only the beginning. What comes next? Well, that's where it gets a little complicated. So this podcast, I created it to have the conversations that don't get talked about enough, the shifts that happen from founder to leader and leader to legacy builder, the identity changes, the emotional weight, and the real challenges that come with growth and growing something beyond yourself. Well, on this show, we'll be sitting down with business leaders, founders, and CEOs who have built incredible organizations. We'll hear their stories, the early days of building, the highs and the struggles of scaling, and ultimately the challenges they faced as their roles began to change. We'll talk openly about founder syndrome, what it is, how it shows up, and how leaders can move through it and become something more. Because it isn't just about business growth. It's about personal growth. It's about learning how to let go, how to trust others, and how to step into a version of leadership that allows what you've built to continue long after you. I started this podcast because I lived it. I felt the tension of being needed less in the same way and not knowing what that meant for me. And I realized there are so many leaders out there going through the exact same thing, and often silently, most of the time silently. So my hope is that through these conversations, you'll find clarity, encouragement, and maybe even a new perspective on your own journey. Because in the end, this isn't just about what you built. I wanted to start this podcast a long time ago, not knowing that it was this needed. Sleep in Heavenly Peace, when I started as a founder, I didn't realize that I was already in the pathway, on the treadmill or on the starting line of founder syndrome. And I really wanted to talk about that because, like I said earlier, founder syndrome is something that's just not talked about enough, and it's a silent killer. It's a silent killer. I've actually created a course called the Founder Syndrome Survival Course because I've lived it. I know exactly what it feels like when you build something and your identity gets fused to it, and then all of a sudden, as business grows and the evolution of business, you start feeling disconnected. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Listen, I want everybody to hear great people out there, great stories, great leaders that I hope inspire you and let you know that even someone like this little farm kid from Idaho can turn a small little family Christmas project into now what is the largest bed building charity in the world. And that is amazing, right? That's great. But it's important also to understand the troubles, right? The real life impact that happens to someone that starts an organization, whether you're a CEO, whether you're a business leader or a founder, it doesn't matter. When you build something, when you start something from scratch, right, you will ultimately end up feeling the effects of founder syndrome. So let me talk about that real quick, because I really want you to understand, even though we're going to hear some great stories, and hopefully they inspire you to want to go do your own thing and act on your tiny moments to find your passions, which then become your purposes and your meaning to life, your legacy. That's what this is about. But along the way, there are troubled waters. They will come. So if you're a business leader out there, listen up. If you're a startup, someone that's an entrepreneur that's ready to hit the ground running, the first advice, right, that I want to share with you, which is, I heard this not too long ago, and it was beautiful, so I'm robbing it here, is just remember, whatever organization you start, for-profit, nonprofit, whatever program you start within your organization, whatever you build, you need to understand one thing. This organization, this whatever, will not love you the way you're going to love it. And that's important to remember as you go through it. When I started Sleep in Heavenly Peace, I loved it so much. Like many founders, I threw my blood, sweat, tears, soul, everything at this because it was my passion. I was going through something very rough internally, right? I was going through a faith crisis. I was going through identity crisis. I didn't know what was the important things to me in life anymore, right? I grew up in a single family. My mom, who was my hero, my favorite person, she pounded into us kids: get your education, go to school, so you get a good job, and you don't starve like we have. Although we didn't starve, but we did go without, right? And she didn't want that for us, like any parent. The measurement of success I took away was making sure that I made good money, which is not a bad measure of success. However, when I hit a certain age, I was about 35. And, my kids were starting to grow up, they were 7 and 10, and they were getting to that stage where they ask questions. And I don't know, for me, I just really looked at that thinking, you know what, money's fine, but is that really what's most important in life? What is it that is truly valuable? What is it that I want to leave behind? What legacy do I want to leave? That I made a bunch of money? Who cares? Right? When you start asking yourself these questions and you don't have the answers, man, that can be very heartbreaking. It can be very depressing. And I'm not a depressive guy. At least I don't think I am. But I was going down that rabbit hole. And Sleep in Heavenly Peace, finding out that there are children in my hometown that didn't have beds. That's why I wanted to start building beds. And when I started doing that, I had a fire lit in me, a passion I didn't know I had. And that passion then created a purpose in my life and had brought me out of the hole. It brought me an understanding of what is most important in life to me, or at least one thing that can be far more important than what I used to value life or success as. So I started Sleep in Heavenly Peace. And it's funny, especially in the nonprofit world, most organizations start from trauma. They start from personal anguish or experiences. Maybe a friend or a family member committed suicide or had cancer or struggle with a disease that you want help for. I mean, they become very personal, a very personal journey, right? So you start an organization. Well, you build it. And because, guys, we are so tied to it, because it's so personal and it's something we put everything into, when we started building this thing, the next stage in our evolution and in founder syndrome is identity fusion. Now, this is the one stage that we'll talk about a lot. Everybody I've spoken with agrees and understands, when you care so much about your organization, you become one with it, right? Your organization and you, it's your baby. How many times do people tell you that, right? It's your baby. It's your project. It's all about you. And pretty soon, for me, Sleep in Heavenly Peace and Luke Mickelson became one and the same. In fact, right now, 99.9% of the people on the planet that know who I am, they only know who I am because of Sleep in Heavenly Peace. We're the same person. When we walk outside, right, people see us. It's not necessarily Luke Mickelson. It's the guy that started Sleep in Heavenly Peace, right? And all founders and CEOs experience the same thing. But I think this identity fusion, as we unwrap some of these and these stories that we hear from these great leaders, identity fusion is a must, and it's going to happen. Whether you like it or not, you're going to fuse together, and it can be a very beautiful thing. In fact, I think it's a very necessary thing, because that's how your business grows. When you're tied to it, when you're connected to it, when you give it all, of course you're going to identity fuse with it, right? You become the answer to all the questions. You wear all of the hats. You solve all of the problems. And doing that, again, that's why your company is successful. That's why it grows. That's why, people look at you and you're on, you give interviews to share that message. It becomes a personal thing. Not that you want accreditation for it or validation. You just want to share it, right? I wanted to share with people. Listen, there's kids out there sleeping on the floor. We're building beds for them. Come build beds with us so we can help these kids out, right? You just build that. And this identity fusion is the first reason why later on you start experiencing founder syndrome, right? And so we're going to explore that. The next stage of this evolution and the problem that comes from founder syndrome is what I call relevance wounds, right? So when you become identity fused with it, right? You're sitting here with your organization. Now, when an organization grows, we all know it evolves, right? Just like our leadership evolves. The only problem is companies and organizations evolve much differently than us human beings, right? Number one, they don't have emotion. So they evolve in new leadership, new strategies. When you're a nonprofit or even a for-profit, you have a board, right? And that board strengthens. More people come on, more ideas come on. It becomes tighter as things grow, which as a founder, that's exactly what you want, right? We want this thing to grow. We want it to be successful. However, when that evolution happens, when that growth happens, something else happens. We don't grow the same way. We don't evolve as a leader the same way. In fact, our organization begins to move beyond us. And what that means is those meetings that you set up, you're not a part of anymore. Those decisions that were so critical in the beginning of your organization, you're not even asked about now. And those people, those employees that you hired and trained and got them on their path and worked with them and did all this stuff, they answer to someone else, which in your mind is wonderful. You wear less hats, you're less busy, you see the growth of your organization. But that growth with your organization and the person becomes a disconnection. What happens now, what was now fused is becoming defused. And what people don't understand, other than founders, CEOs, business leaders that go through this, that disconnect it feels like your personality, your identity is getting changed right before your eyes. For me, I didn't know how to deal with it. Right, all of a sudden, I was feeling these hurtful betrayal, losing control, less needed, less valued in my own organization. I saw people that were, had just barely come into my organization, board members that never built or delivered a bed in their life. And all of a sudden they were making decisions that were a little different than what I would have done. And even though you understand that, even though you respect the fact that there is leadership levels in an organization, as a founder, it's just different because no one has been as passionate and tied to this mission as you have. And when you start seeing what feels like a separation, that is what's called a relevance wound, right? I'll give you a great example. The first time I ever felt this, and this is very personal, guys, and this is part of why I wanted to do this leadership podcast, right? This evolution, so we can be true and honest and we can be transparent, because that's the only way we get through this. This is a terrible thing that happens to leaders. And oftentimes leaders don't know how to handle it. They experience relevance wounds. They don't know how to deal with it. They feel this disconnection. And so what do? They become defensive. They lash back. They tighten their control on something they know they shouldn't have control over. Someone else is doing it, but they feel like they need to. These are the things that relevance wounds cause. These are the issues that happen when you feel like you're being pulled away. And so in my experience, I had understood and saw and agreed with the fact that I can no longer manage, as the founder, manage all of the day-to-day of Sleep and Emily Peace, right? I was getting called on speaking events and interviews and was doing all of these things that was taking me away from actually running and managing the organization. So the board came to me and said, we would like to make a shift. Although I agreed with it, knowing that I was not going to be a part of the day-to-day, knowing that my employees now were not going to be looking to me to solve these issues. The person that I knew was more tied to this mission than anybody. Other people were making that decision. And although it was very small, right, this relevance wound, which is a little jab of, do I still feel relevant to my own mission, right? Do I still feel like I'm a part of it, right? These wounds would fester. These wounds, because I didn't know how to deal with them, would begin to grow. And then the next thing you know, they get deeper. The board tightens, their governance tightens. They're more concerned about the company, and the company's more concerned about the company than it is you. And that's why I say your company will not love you the same way. And you need to understand that that's going to happen, right? I didn't think so. I wasn't prepared for that. And as the years went by, more and more relevance wounds happened, more and more jabs unintentionally by the people giving them. They didn't know what I was going through. They don't know what founders and CEOs deal with when they have this separation. We don't know. We don't know what's going on. And so the next stage, the most important stage, well, they're all very important actually, but the next stage is to name this monster. So I use this analogy all the time. Can you imagine if you had some sort of a sickness, an illness, right? You're feeling symptoms of something. And when you go to the doctor, what's like the worst thing? Well, I shouldn't say the worst thing that happened, but it sucks when you go to the doctor and the doctor says, well, I don't know what it is. I mean, how frustrating is that? You come home and you're like, I don't know why my shoulder hurts. I can't figure it out. I can't do all the things that I wanted to do. Now the doctor doesn't know. You become so frustrated. You don't know how to deal with it. You don't know what to take to solve it, right? You're just dealing with these emotions and these pains. Now, transversely, let's say you go to the doctor and he says, oh, you just got, I don't know, tennis elbow, or you pulled a muscle or something. Now you have a diagnosis. Now you can deal with it. Well, when you don't know as a leader, this evolution that's happening with your company and yourself and all this, and these feelings are happening, and you're getting stabbed at these relevance was all, you don't know what it is. You don't know why, right? I should be so happy that my organization's growing, but why do I feel like I'm being pushed out, right? So what is that? What is that about? When it happened to me, I'll be honest with you guys, I was probably this close with people in my organization that have just about enough of me, right? Being defensive, being hurt, reacting poorly to getting in arguments about, and it was all about me trying to retain control, trying to help myself feel like I'm still relevant. And it always comes across very defensive. Well, I set out to solve this. Now, first of all, you set out to solve this problem. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to go to counseling. I was taking anxiety medicine. I was working every way I could to solve this issue. Well, the sad thing is I couldn't find anybody that really knew what was going through. Sure, there was other coaches that talked about, business leadership and letting go. But that was just naming the symptoms I already knew. Naming what I already knew my elbow hurt, right? But I wanted to know what it was. And that's when I found out about founder syndrome. Now, I heard those words before, and maybe you have as well. But when I took a deep dive into it and really realized as a founder, that's exactly what I was going through. And I'll tell you this right now, because I took some time, number one, gone through it, and took some time to really research what are the effects, what are the reasons why, how do we get through this, how do we overcome this? It has changed my life. It has changed my view of my own organization in a much more positive way, right? It has saved me. I'm convinced it wouldn't have been too far down the road had I continued that I would be kicked out of my own passion, my own organization. And guys, if you don't think it's real, if you don't think that would have happened, trust me, I've done a lot of research. There are many, many founders and CEOs that are no longer about a part of their organization. They wish they were, but they're no longer a part of it because of this founder syndrome, and they didn't know how to deal with it. So this is the purpose of this podcast. When you realize, and the fourth step of naming the monster, realizing what it is you're dealing with, which is founder syndrome, Now we can handle it. It's kind of like having a monster in the closet, right? You don't know if you don't open the door. You don't know how big this monster is. I mean, and us humans, for whatever reason, we make this monster big and huge and as ugly as possible because we can't see it. We don't know what it is. And the sad reality, when you experience a relevance wound, when someone says, "Oh, you don't need to talk to Luke about that. That's not his decision anymore," right? Whatever it is, this monster starts talking behind your back, right? It starts talking to you. And the reason why it's so believable, the reason why it's so you follow it and agree with it is because it's your voice. It's you talking to you, but it's the monster, right? It's the monster sitting in the closet. But once you name it, once you open that closet door, and that's what naming does it. That's what getting your diagnosis is, and seeing, oh, this is founder syndrome. This is the monster I'm dealing with. Now we can shrink it down. Now we can deal with it. Now we know, okay, what is the remedy to work through this? Well, I've come up with 5 disciplines that we can follow to help us work through leadership evolution and founder syndrome. And we're going to talk about that in our podcast. I want to hear the stories of other CEOs that have all been through it. And I guarantee you there's going to be some that don't know they're going through it. There's different stages of it. Whether you're just starting out an organization, you're not experiencing relevance wounds like other older founders and as their businesses grow, but that's okay. It's still valuable to know. It's still important for you to understand that this phenomenon will happen to you. Because here's the sad reality as we close this podcast. The sad reality, guys, is you'll never get away from it. Founder syndrome will always be over, in the back of your mind. It'll be always hovering over us because we have built something we love so much. In a lot of cases, this thing that we've built, this organization, this mission, this initiative, whatever you want to call it, saved us. It brought us passion that we've needed. It solved problems that we've always wanted to deal with, or even for others that we've loved ones that we've saw them go through something that we want now to help. This will never go away, right? We'll always have that passion. So we need to learn how to deal with it. And trust me when I say there are ways to deal with it. And it's in a great way. We just have to understand now as founders, we take on different roles. It's not about building something. The stages of new roles for founders that are experiencing founder syndrome. There's the build stage. The build stage is, some of the founders might still be CEOs or might still be executive directors working on building their organization and building their programs. But you're still going to have part of founder syndrome as you develop into your identity fusion, right? The second stage is an architect. And the architect, things are being built. Now you're just refining it, right? You're putting the drapes on the windows, right? You're putting the flower beds in the yard. You're now starting to refine it and work on it. And that's an architect. That's what some of us founders turn into. And then the next stage is an anchor, right? Now you've built it. You've put all the needed software programs and efficiencies in it and the policies in it. And now you get to anchor it. Now it's sure. You've got a foundation. And this is where scale really starts to happen. Sleep in Heavenly Peace, it wasn't until about 2023, about 10 years later, that we finally had a pretty good anchor. And that's when we really started blowing up, which was awesome. But that's one of the more critical points and times in a founder's life where we start really feeling the effects of founder syndrome. Well, the next stage is the ambassador. And this is where I feel like I'm at. I'm the ambassador. I don't make big decisions anymore. I'm consulted, right? And I'm honored to do that. But this organization has now grown beyond my help when it comes to making these decisions, because we have a much more important role to play now. We get to share these experiences. We get to share with the world what this has done for us, what we see the impact it has on, and the initiative that people get to feel when they're a part of your organization. All right, so an ambassador is one of those stages that I love being in, because we get to tell the story, right? And the last one is a mentor, right? And a mentor has various interactions with the organization. I'm not a mentor yet, but I know that people that have been now, they consult, right? They're looked to as a legacy icon in that organization, right? To know that this person still is viewed as part of the organization. This person has the knowledge of what it means to work from the garage to the globe, right? These are all wonderful stages that us founders that have gone through founder syndrome, that have dealt and felt the separation of our organization, these are the roles that we can take on. Because listen, the board, the executive team, whatever, the organization itself, and everybody that's included in there, they don't understand what you're going through, right? And they will only see the negative effects until we help them realize that we take a different role. This is one of the 5 disciplines, is announcing what you are now. Because people need to know, some people still look at you as the problem solver. And because you're not, so you don't, well, that can look negatively on you. And you know that, right? You don't want that. So when you finally announce who you are, people understand now, okay, Luke is the ambassador now. He's not the guy I go and talk to about this problem or that problem, right? I'm the ambassador. I'm a tool now for my organization, because the board and the organization, the company, needs to understand and will agree with, when you have the organization and you have the founder and they're still together, they're still working together, that whole organization is far stronger. And that's what we want. That's what the board wants. That's what the executive team wants. That's what the company wants, right? And that's what we need to be for that company. So the Leadership Evolution podcast is about exploring these great organizations, hearing their stories, how they started, the initiatives and the programs and the products and the success that they've seen. So we can feel and understand and be inspired by that. But we also want to understand the challenges that come from evolution, the whether it's a company or just our individual leadership. Because when we build something that outlives us and outgrows us, right, we no longer are building the nuts and bolts of the organization. We're building legacy now. And in this organization, you're the only one that can build this legacy successful for yourself, right? Other people have parts and pieces of the legacy that they built within this organization, but you're the founder, you're the CEO, you're the business leader that started the program, right? And that's a great position to be, knowing that it's going to evolve, but knowing that now we can build on legacy. So as we dive into these stories, I hope you glean the inspiration that these men and women have found to find their passions, to identity fuse with it, to build their organization, and then how we can work together, overcoming some of the challenges that's found in business evolution, in leadership evolution, and in founder syndrome. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more episodes coming up. If you like us, please follow us on all the podcast platforms, including YouTube, where we want to share these stories and find those founders out there that are struggling and trying to find their way on how to be okay, how to outlast and live with things that they've built that lives beyond themselves. Thanks for watching. Thank you for joining me on the Leadership Evolution podcast. If something in today's conversation challenged you, stretched you, or made you think a little differently, that's the point. Growth always starts with awareness. And if you are struggling in your journey, if you feel like you are fading away from what you have built, visit my website, lukemickelson.com, and learn how you can take back your confidence and create lasting legacy. If you found value in this episode, please share it with another leader who may be in the middle of their own evolution. And remember, your role as a leader isn't just to build something successful. It's to build something that lasts. Build what outlives you.